And now, welcome to the stage, YouTuber and rebel Tesla mechanic, Rich Benoit.
The low rider. The low rider is a little higher.
Rich Benoit has always loved cars.
Since I was 3 years old, love cars. Absolutely. I always had this thing, anything on four wheels that went fast, I'm all for it. Lawnmowers, you name it.
But for this Boston-bred, father of three, otherwise mild-mannered IT guy, it was a later encounter with something a bit pricier than a lawnmower that ended up supercharging his car passion.
A friend of mine, he's like, hey, listen, I landed a gig at Tesla. You gotta see this thing. Like, I'm outside your house, come see this car.
But like most of us, Rich Benoit couldn't afford a Tesla. So, he built his own Tesla.
Can everyone hear me okay? Like sound-wise? Sound pretty good? All right. So I feel like an absolute fraud being up here because I feel like I'm not the subject matter expert in anything. Mary and Kathy sent me an email saying, do you want to speak at our conference? And I said, absolutely not. And they said, there'll be free food. And I'm like, okay, I'll swing by for a little bit. So that's pretty cool. But it's just a quick reminiscent of speeches I made in the past. My very first talk I had in front of a group of kids that went to a private school out west. I don't want to say what school it was, but it was a school where the tuition was approximately $60,000 to $70,000 a year for high schoolers. So I went in there with a mindset saying, I'm going to wow these kids, going to be so awesome, they're going to love what I do. And I went in there, I went to the restroom, and there was a Dyson air dryer. You know those Dyson air dryers, which I despise, by the way. But there was one directly in front of the sink. And after I washed my hands, the water started dripping down from the sink into the Dyson air blade. I stuck my hands in and it immediately sprayed water all over my face and all over my pants. So pretty much I had to talk to about 100 kids with like a giant wet stain in front of my pants. Hopefully I don't have one now. I think I'm pretty good. But it's funny because I just came here and you have obviously an air blade on the wall, which brings back tough memories. But either way, so my name's Rich, and the last name is pronounced Benoit. The person in Chronicle, butchered it a couple of times, but that's okay. Basically why I'm here is to kind of tell you guys about my journey and like how I got here, how I got to be, and what I do now. So in the article they mentioned that I was an IT person, and I was an IT person, yes. I decided to pursue this dream of fixing Teslas full time, and that's what I do now. So long story short, a long time ago, my friend came over, he said, listen, buddy, I got a job at Tesla, right? You got to check one of these cars out. I said, whatever, they're electric, they don't make any noise, it's like a sewing machine, I don't want anything to do with it. I love my gas cars that go vroom, vroom, right? So he came over, and I drove this car around, and I said, you know what, it's okay, it's whatever, it's fine. I guess it's fine. I called them later on that night. I said, hey, can you bring that car over one more time? I want to drive it again. This thing is phenomenal. It was super quiet. It was fast. I love fast cars. I have a Corvette. I have a bunch of other really cool cars too. But this one kind of stuck out to me because it's so deceptively fast, but it's quiet at the same time. So I said to myself, you know what? I have to have one of these things. These things are phenomenal. How much do they cost? I'll write you a check right now. And he said, this one's going to be a little bit over $95,000. I said, you know what? I'm going to put this checkbook back in my pocket because I can't afford that. So I said to myself, you know what? I can't swing that right now or later on or ever. But that's what you have to say that. You have to say, well, I can't. That's a little tight right now. But in reality, I could never afford it. So I said to myself, you know what? There has to be a better way for you to get into one of these cars for a lower price. So I actually started looking at auctions online, and there are these auctions where you can purchase cars from insurance companies for ones that have been in accidents or roll off a cliff or you name it, any kind of accident you could think of. So I searched and searched, and finally I found one that was actually underwater in my price range. And that was the only one I could afford. They were so expensive, I could literally only afford a Tesla that was literally underwater for 5 days. So I said to myself, you know what? It was $15,000, right? And this is, even at $15,000, it was one of the more expensive cars that I've ever owned, especially one that didn't work. So I said to myself, you know what? I have to try this out. I'm gonna buy it. I went to my wife, I said, listen, sweetie, Allison, crazy story for you. I really want this Tesla, but we don't have the money right now to buy one, but I wanna buy this wrecked one to see if I could fix it, and maybe we'll have a really cool Tesla to drive around. What I'll do, I'll get 10 bags of rice, throw it in the car, and I'll be driving it in no time. It's gonna be awesome. I'm a great salesman, by the way. Oh, I was like, okay, sure, awesome. So I purchased the car, it got to my house, nothing worked at all. Nothing worked. I was freaking out. I said, you know what, this isn't gonna work. This is gonna be terrible. I called Tesla. Tesla said, LOL, we're not gonna sell you any parts because A, you can't afford the parts in the first place, and number two, we don't sell parts to vehicles that we decide were blacklisted, meaning vehicles that were salvaged in an accident or just weren't worth repairing. I said, okay, thank you very much for your time. I didn't say it that nicely, but I was like, okay. So I sat down for a couple days, and the main motivator behind this was I knew I had to get this car fixed. Okay, I had to figure this thing out. I'm not an engineer. I'm like your basic, first, second level IT help desk guy. I'm like, oh, your computer's broken? Sure. Power off, power back on, pay me, and I go home. That's our secret. Don't tell anyone. So I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to figure this out somehow. And again, the main motivator behind this was I can't hear the words, "I told you so," from my wife. Okay? That was the main motivator. I had to figure this out. What I ended up doing was I thought to myself, the same way that I got myself into this mess, I'm gonna get myself out of this mess. I bought a second Tesla, right? A second one at the wonderful price of $15,000. So I have $30,000 of my wife and I's money tied up, right? So at this point, I'm trying to figure out, okay, we have 2 kids together, which one isn't going to college? We both kind of knew which one it was, but either way. So we selected the child that wasn't going to college. We're like, all right, you're definitely not going, but we didn't tell them yet, obviously. And then, so now, this second Tesla was hitting the front. So I said to myself, you know what? I'm gonna do this. I'm actually going to take all the parts from one car, put it in the other, and see if it works, right? Should technically work. It took me about 6 months. So every night after work, after my IT job, I'd come home and work for maybe 3 or 4 hours every night for 6 months. And then I finally got the guts of one car into the other, right? Now, when I tried to get this thing to go, it wouldn't run because it needed the key. So I called Tesla and said, hey, listen, I have one of your cars here. I need the key. Same response, LOL, nice try, and they hung up the phone. I ended up going into the GPS of the car that I purchased. It powered up, and it found the previous owner's address. Weird, right? It's getting weird. I said to myself, you know what? I got to figure this out. I found the person's address. They owned a business. I called them up. I said, hey, this is awkward. I don't even know how to start this conversation, but I just bought your car. And he's like, which one? I go, you had a Tesla that was underwater, right? He said, yeah. He said, this is weird. I said, I know, right? I said, do you have the key? And he said, dude, I threw that thing away a long time ago. Like, I have a different car now, da-da-da, thanks for playing. He hung up. I cried myself to sleep. 2 weeks later, he called me back and he said, dude, I found the key. And I was like, what? I go, send me that key immediately. He said, yeah, how does like $600 sound? I was like, $600 sounds terrible. I said, so we started talking, I kind of whined and dined the guy over the phone. I was like, listen, this is a really big project for me. I appreciate this, I appreciate you. I have a really nice, snazzy Corvette. It's blue. He goes, I had a blue Corvette too. I was like, yeah, awesome. He goes, I sold it to a guy in Florida. I said, well, I bought my car from a guy in Florida. I said, dude, no, this is getting too weird. I go, was this the VIN? He said, yes, that's the VIN. I said, okay, I own your car. And he's like, that's amazing. How does $450 sound for that key? See, I was trying to, it didn't work. I was like, you know what, just take the money and get the hell out of here. So I ended up getting the key in the mail, had him overnight it. I sat in the car on a milk crate, because I didn't put in the seats yet, and I pressed the key, sat down, put the car into reverse, and it backed out of my garage. Yeah, right, crazy. So there were about maybe 400 people that didn't think that I could do something like that. Neither did I. I doubted myself too. My wife was super pumped. We were all excited. I ended up actually selling the parts that I didn't need from the other Tesla to get the price of the one I drive now down. So all said and done, 2 cars were about $15,000 a piece, total of $30,000. I sold the parts I no longer needed. The Tesla that I drive right now, I ended up paying about maybe $5,000 for it. Yeah, pretty crazy, I know. So that's when things started spiraling out of control. So I said to myself, yeah, I could do this. And then someone said, hey, I want a Tesla too. Hey, I want one too. Hey, I want one too. Hey, I want one too. The problem is that I'm only one person and I can't build them for people, because what starts to happen is that one took me 6 months to make. And if another person comes and says, I want one as well, financially it doesn't make any sense for me to build them one, because it's my labor and time, and at the end of it, I have something that's kind of hobbled together. They may not like it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I said to myself, you know what, there's got to be a better way to do this. I have to find a way that I could help people in some way. And during this time, a couple of years ago, Tesla was ramping up production of the Model 3, and they were having production hell nightmares, according to Elon Musk. They were making the cars so fast, there were quality issues. When there was a problem with your car, you'd have to wait a month to 2 months to get anything repaired. So I'm the self-proclaimed Tesla guy. How can I solve this problem somehow, or at least attempt to solve this problem? So the story that you just saw, that was published in the Boston Globe. And then that actually made its way to a podcaster called Joe Rogan. I'm sure maybe you've heard from him before. Joe Rogan actually called me, flew me out to California, and I talked on his show for approximately 3 hours about the things that I do in terms of Tesla land. After that, I talked to one of my friends, the same exact friend that gave me the ride in the first Tesla, and he said, you know what? I think you have the right drive. I think we can do something together. So needless to say, I opened up a business called the Electrified Garage, and I have 2 Tesla employees that currently work for us. What we do at Electrified Garage, we actually service and repair vehicles, and we actually build them as well. So I guess the whole point of this, I fast forward a little out of the story because I didn't want to bore you guys, but it's really crazy with me just being up on the stage in general, because I was just a regular IT guy. And the reason, actually, the method that I used to go from a regular IT guy to a full-time business owner was Joe Rogan called. He said, hey, man, I want you out here on the show. And if you don't know Joe Rogan, he has about maybe 5 to 6 million people that listen to him every month. So I told my boss at the time, I said, hey, man, Joe Rogan's calling me, and he wants you to go out to California for a week to be on a show, which is going to be huge for me. I have a little crappy YouTube channel that I have, and I was like, that's going to make things awesome. I know it is. My boss said to me, hey, buddy, Skip, Bub, Jack. You know those generic names you use when you don't know someone's name? He said, listen, you don't have any more vacation time left. So you're going to have to tell Joe Rogan no. And I said, well, this is going to be the biggest thing of my YouTube career. And he's like, I understand that you make those little funny videos on the internet, but this is the real world. You don't have any vacation time left. And I said, I have to go. And so what are we going to do? And he said, well, I can't let you go. I said, well, I quit. So I quit my full-time steady job, right, to follow this crazy dream of making goofy YouTube videos on the internet and also starting a business which I service and repair electric vehicles, right? Many of which are still under warranty. Keep that in mind. So you don't have to come to us. Most people that have these vehicles actually still go to Tesla. So this is one of the most terrifying business adventures you could ever imagine. So imagine a world where there are tens of thousands of electric vehicles in the world that just came out, and your business is to service and repair these vehicles when most of them are still under warranty. Kind of scary, huh? Believe it or not, we had a grand opening about a month and a half ago. We had 1,500 people show up. and this is in Seabrook, New Hampshire. People don't really like going to New Hampshire too much, but I was surprised in itself. We had 1,500 people show up. The Boston Herald showed up, the Globe showed up. A lot of people came to give their support. We've been open for about a month and a half, and we are booked every single day. So believe it or not, people are actually coming for other things that Tesla can't fix in a timely fashion. For example, if you have a Model 3 or Model S or Model X, those are the three various models of Teslas. What we'll do is we'll service your, let's just say, you know the Model X that has these really cool, funky falcon wing doors? One of the major things with those doors is they lead to issues where they squeak, they'll have water intrusion, etc. When you call Tesla for service, what they'll do is they'll say it'll be about 3 to 4 weeks to get it repaired, or we could send you a Tesla Ranger depending on where you live. So what they'll do is they'll send a person out to actually drive out to you and fix your vehicle on the spot. So what we've been doing is we've actually been slowly kind of undercutting them in a lot of senses. People have been coming us with all kinds of various issues that Tesla can't fix in a timely fashion, obviously. And it's been very overwhelming. It's a new business venture. I am absolutely terrified of this, but it's going really well so far. And that's kind of, I know I'm running out of time. I have like 0 seconds left, but that's my goofy little story. I have a business. I'm not a polished professional that's at the height of my career or anything. I'm just a regular guy that kind of started all of this, and I'm coming up here shaking because it's really scary. It's really freaking scary. But thanks for listening to my story. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you very much.